F1 on BBC Radio 5 Sports Extra.
After years of trying, has Formula One finally cracked America? Well, with 3 races on the calendar for this season, it certainly looks that way. And we arrive for the first of them in Miami, the coastal metropolis of Florida. The sun is shining down on the palm trees that surround this track, which itself runs around the Hard Rock Stadium, home to the Miami Dolphins NFL team, with the pitch now home to Formula One's paddock. It's busy everywhere you look off track, but on it, it's about to get even busier. Welcome to live coverage of Free Practice 2 from the Miami Autodrome. My name is Harry Benjamin. Alongside me is former Renault Formula One driver Jolyon Palmer, and in FP1, Jolyon, it's a tough start to the session for George Russell, but turned things around, set the fastest lap. In fact, it was a 1-2 for Mercedes in the end. It's only practice, but can we get a little bit excited?
Nope.
Okay.
It's only practice. It was nice for them having a 1-2. It was nice, but they were on soft tyres right at the end. The track, it started off pretty slippery. It was still quite slippery by the end, but it was getting better. A new surface that's not been used, ever. So needs a bit of rubbering in. Grip level coming up. Mercedes were on the new softs right at the end. Track at its best. 1-2. It's nice on the time screens. It's nice. This one will be a bit more important.
Well, there certainly was a lot going on during that FP1 session, really. Issues for a few drivers as well around this 3.3 mile, 5.4 kilometre track. 19 corners, and Christian Hugel finds himself down in the pit lane.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Yes, I certainly do. And I'm delighted to say, from a personal point of view anyway, that the temperature's dropped a little bit, because for the last couple of hours here in Miami, it's been absolutely baking. And one of the things we heard from so many of the drivers in FP1 was that they were struggling for grip. So let's look at how the air temperature's dropped by about 2 or 3 degrees Celsius, and it's noticeable in the grandstands opposite me. They have sort of those multiple propeller fans, the sort of thing that you see in an old-fashioned conservatory, if that analogy makes any sense whatsoever, blowing in the wind, and they were silent, they were still, I should say, in FP1. So a cooler track temperature. Let's see if that has any impact on grip on these guys, or whether we're going to have a few more wall scrapes and spins this time round.
Just trying to think what an old-fashioned conservatory looks like.
I've messed that up, I won't lie to you. Basically, my mum and dad had one of those old-school electric fans on the ceiling that had, like, wooden...
Did it have, like, a pulley string
yes,
attached? Yeah, okay, I'm with you.
Exactly it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And they've got those in the top of the grandstands, and they were stock still in FP1. And now they're going mad, and I was trying to connect that to make a motor racing point of the track temperature's probably going to be cooler. I don't think I did a particularly brilliant job, but you know what I was getting at now.
Yeah, I got it.
A bit of breeze.
Okay, good.
A bit of breeze in the air.
Could have just said that, couldn't I, really? I didn't really need to talk about the fans, but, you know, I went down that road committed now.
I'm here for the conservatory chat.
I think you need to go and have a look at a few more conservatories, Jolly. I'm surprised you haven't had one somewhere in the Palmer family lineage, an old conservatory somewhere along the way.
No, but it was this whole the concept of the big fan, and
with a little pulley string, and it might have a light in it attached sometimes as well.
Yes, that's exactly what
we're
I
on
was
the
getting
same
at,
wavelength,
yes.
Christian.
Look,
we
it's
are.
just the bit that's bamboozled me about it, but I'm pleased it's a little bit cooler. I'm pleased.
That's the headline to take from it.
Thanks, Christian. Yeah, air temperature 28.5 degrees, track temperature 41.5 degrees, 50% humidity as well. Still waiting for this Free Practice 2 session to get the green light. But FP1 was an interesting session. We had the Ferraris trying out a new floor as well. They were making their way around and had some decent lap times to show for it as well. Leclerc in 3rd, Sainz in 5th. But Nico Hülkenberg in the Haas was the reason that we got a red flag in that FP1 session. Had a big incident, lost the rear end and went smack into the wall, and that is a big issue for Haas, who were also trying out a new floor. In fact, Nico Hülkenberg went round to the rear of the car, punched the air in frustration when he saw that he damaged the rear end. It looks like the Haas team have certainly managed to rebuild that car and get it out for Free Practice 2. His lap time that he did before the red flag was still enough to hold 9th place, and Kevin Magnussen only a few spots behind. So Jolyon, Haas not looking in too bad a shape, really, but they'll be hoping for a cleaner session on the Hulkenberg side of the garage.
They've done the first thing well, which is to repair Hulkenberg's car. He's poised and ready to go as the session goes green. And now we're waiting to see, probably later on, the extent of the damage. Do they have spare parts of the upgrade? Because Hulkenberg was quick. That's the encouraging thing for them. And he went in pretty hard at turn 3. It was the big crash of FP1. Punishing circuit, fast corners in the first sector. A lot of drivers struggling. We saw huge lurid slides from Alex Albon. We did have a spin for De Vries as well. It's punishing, and so far in the first hour it was just Hulkenberg that actually managed to collect the wall, but he's going to be back out there straight away.
Yep, session underway then. 59 minutes and 20 seconds on the clock for those syncing up. Bottas and Zhou Guanyu in the Alfa Romeo's first out, and while that was getting underway, Jolyon Palmer's been Googling conservatory fans, which is always good to see, just reassuring yourself of what they are. Are you up to speed?
Yeah, honestly, I've never seen a conservatory fan before, so... Because conservatories, they lead to an outdoors area, don't they? That's the nature of a conservatory. So you can get a nice draft on a normal day. You get a draft come through. You open the doors, bam, open a front door to your house. Nice draft comes through. Surprised you need a fan. But
I think the beauty is that if it's not a nice day, you can still sit out in the conservatory, but sometimes it might get a bit humid, a bit of condensation, so you need the fan spinning around. So maybe that might be why. We'll see as Lewis Hamilton in his Mercedes makes his way out of the pit lane. Enough conservatory chat for now, maybe 58 minutes and a half to go. Nick De Vries, Esteban Ocon, Russell and Piastri still in the pits. Those are the 4 drivers who have yet to get out. Jolyon, the track completely resurfaced for this weekend's Miami Grand Prix, and we've seen, even just going slightly offline, cars really struggling with a lack of grip, and it's such a tricky circuit as well. You've got the final sector really dominated by that 1.28 kilometre long straight. The middle sector is all tight and twisty, so drivers will be hoping that this track gets grippier the more they go around it, I presume.
Definitely. I think they were overall disappointed with the amount of grip available for them, especially with the walls there to greet them if they have a slide go wrong. Everyone getting straight out there, minus De Vries, Ocon, Russell and Piastri, who are still in the pits. All on the hards or the mediums right now, and then they'll go on to their soft tyres in about 15 minutes time and go for a qualifying simulation run. And with every lap, the grip level will come up, so it will only get better from here.
Yeah, if you were with us last week in Azerbaijan, we're back to a normal standard weekend, so this is free practice 2, and we will have free practice 3 tomorrow ahead of qualifying.
It's quite nice having a low grip surface though, isn't it, for us?
Challenging. We've seen some great spins. Albon catching the rear end, and FP1 coming through that left-right tight turn 14-15 complex.
Yeah, I quite like seeing drivers having to really fight. If they go a little bit wide, they're sliding around, they're fighting with lockups as well. Alonso a little bit twitchy coming on the throttle, coming out of turn 16. We jump on board with him down towards the big braking zone of 17. This was catching a lot of drivers out, locking the left front. Alonso's on a hard tyre in his Aston Martin. He'll jump on the brakes. And there he goes, down the gears, and he's hooked up an apex neatly. But if you go a bit wide there, that looks fairly punishing. We saw drivers missing a lot of lap time by just going deep on that one. Alonso makes a change to the steering wheel as he prepares for a slower lap now, goes to the top of the times.
He certainly does. The sun beats down on this Miami International Autodrome track. A few track alterations, but mainly to do with the runoff areas, been slightly reduced in certain places, and the DRS zones, 2 out of the 3 have been shortened by 75 metres. And we talked about that in FP1, Jolyon. There was a bit of talk about it in the start of the week as well. You know, why are they doing that? Is it going to aid overtaking? Is it going to hinder it? Last year we saw 110 overtakes in the Miami Grand Prix, and perhaps maybe because we're back. You don't believe
110
me?
overtakes?
Apparently 110. Apparently, no, that's
from who?
No, that's wrong. It wasn't 110 overtakes. I've read the wrong thing. Zhou Guanyu did the most overtakes.
Did 110 overtakes?
Yeah, in one race. Can you believe it? Underrated. We talked about him earlier. Underrated indeed. But my point being is the DRS zones being shortened. How much of an impact is that really going to have? And do you think it's worthwhile doing?
And what was the Zhou Guanyu stat?
Well, so my stats here. So I think this is 2020. 3 so far. Zhou Guanyu has the most overtakes with 29.
Okay.
Yeah. Kevin Magnussen had the most overtakes in Miami last year with 14. So a little bit shy of 110.
Okay.
But that's where we're at with the numbers.
Right.
But back to the DRS zones. Being shortened, worth it or not really?
Well, it was pretty unpopular in Baku last time out. It was a difficult race for overtaking. George Russell has come out this weekend and said, well, we told the FIA that they should lengthen the zones. It's going to be tough to overtake, and they ignored us. It'll be the same this week. It'll be hard to overtake. Personally, I don't really mind the fact if it's tricky to overtake. I'd rather it be on the edge of hard to overtake than have loads of overtake, have 110 overtakes that are done in a straight line. I want to see overtakes done in the corners or through pressuring someone into a mistake, and you get decent sort of lunges or wheel-to-wheel scrapping. Straight line DRS passes with the faster guy coming past the slower one, as we saw from the Red Bulls in recent races, that doesn't do it for me either. So it's a fine line that the FIA have got to tread in positioning these DRS zones. We want action, but we want the right action. Time will tell, I think, what this one will be like on Sunday. And then I guess if it's also a little bit too difficult, they'll adjust that for future races. But it seems fairly set for now. The drivers will all have a meeting this evening to further discuss.
Yeah, well, hashtag BBC F1, if you want to get involved in the conversation, we'll try and actually come to you for this FP2 session. Catriona has got in touch. This is why I much prefer the traditional F1 weekends with 3 practice sessions. Last weekend, there was no time for diversions into conservatory fans or such like. Well, that is what the 5 Live commentary is all about. Christian Hugill, though, it's going to keep us back on track and is down outside AlphaTauri.
No, he started the conservatory.
Oh, he did?
Give us another.
But it was an analogy to do with, I can't actually remember now. Oh, yeah, the track resurfacing.
The track being a bit cooler. It's a fair point from Jolie, and it was entirely my fault. So I'll redeem myself by talking about Formula One then, shall I? Nick De Vries, about 3 or 4 minutes ago, drove past me out of the garage to get his first proper running in, really, of the weekend. And we were speaking right at the start of FP1 saying if there's anyone who really needs a good weekend, it's Nick De Vries. He's not shown much flashes of speed. He's been outdone by Yuki Tsunoda. There's been mistakes, there's been spins. And then what did he do, FP1? Touch the wall, which the team spent the rest of the session repairing. The car was totally stripped to its bare bones when I saw it at the end of FP2. So Nick De Vries is back out there now. And I think of any of these 20 drivers on the grid, he's probably the one under the most pressure in this FP2 session, because he really needs to keep it clean, to get some laps under his belt. He's learning yet another new circuit, and he's the rookie that's probably, well, will definitely find himself under the most pressure. So let's keep an eye on this session. He will hope for a much cleaner session this time round.
Absolutely, he does. As Carlos Sainz goes fastest in the Scarlet Ferrari, a 1:31, just a whisker in front of Verstappen. But Charles Leclerc has gone quicker than them all by 6.5 tenths, a 1:29.4 for the Monegasque.
Tidy that from Leclerc. Really decent. 6 tenths up on Sainz and Verstappen. Verstappen's on a hard tyre, and so is Perez, whereas the 2 Ferraris are on medium, so they should be a little bit quicker. Whoa, Magnussen.
Oh, and he touches the wall coming through. That's the 14-15 complex, isn't it?
Mamma mia, he was close to wiping the rear end out.
You okay, Kev?
I'm good.
Okay.
Spun. Brushed the wall, but I don't think it's any damage.
Okay, we think it's okay as well. We'll keep you informed.
Lucky boy.
Jeepers. Into 14, and he's arcing around to the left-hand side, loses it on the brakes. Hamilton's had a big swapper as well. Sound you can hear is him cutting through the chicane at 15, saving a big slide that Magnussen didn't, and he spun backwards. And as the wall juts out, it looked like he was going to be plunging into it in very similar fashion to Hulkenberg earlier on. But thankfully, the next corner, he just ended up slithering down, brushing it, and went down towards the exit of 15 in the end. So lucky escape from Kevin Magnussen.
A big gulp on the pit wall from Haas team principal Gunther Steiner as he watches on, his Haas car just escaping the walls. To go back to Christian and what he was talking about with AlphaTauri, Nick De Vries coming under pressure. You know, we're 4 races done, about to embark on a 5th. He's in that AlphaTauri Red Bull program. He's a rookie, but he's older. He's got more experience, not just in Formula 1 cars, but in Formula 2, in Formula E and sports cars as well. We know there is a queue of drivers that are happy to replace him should he not make the cut. But do you think they'll give him at least a season, if not more? Because in recent years, AlphaTauri have been giving their youngsters at least 3. I mean, Yuki Tsunoda now into his 3rd season. This is exactly the kind of progression that Franz Tost and the AlphaTauri heads expected. And Yuki Tsunoda has certainly seemed to step up to the plate in the wake of Pierre Gasly.
Tsunoda has. Here's Verstappen.
Made my headrest again. I'm just stuck all the time in my head.
So that's a repeat of the message. Well, it's a new message of the same content as Max earlier on in FP1. So his headrest is getting stuck with the hands device. So the hands device keeps your head in position, prevents you having a big whiplash incident if you hit the wall. And it's obviously wedging somewhere within his headrest and stopping him being able to move his head at all, which is pretty difficult to drive sometimes when you can't really, you're limited in movement. You're already not able to move your head too much, but if you're absolutely stuck somewhere, then trying to look left or right is particularly tricky. Looking into the corners, basically, quite the challenge. Young drivers, AlphaTauri. Tsunoda was exceptionally young when he came in. He'd done 1 year of Formula 2, was decent, promising rookie, and was given a shot almost before he was particularly ready. Could have done another year of Formula 2, but the classic Red Bull thing, chuck him in and they'll sink or swim. And he was doggy paddling for a while, wasn't he, in the first year?
We had a great start in Bahrain, battling with Fernando Alonso and overtaking down the inside. It was a flash start, but then it kind of, as you say, trickled out in the middle part of the season, his rookie season.
Yeah, and now I wouldn't say he's fully Phelps, but he's on the way to being a decent swimmer in it, and a bit of time has helped him. Gasly was a great mentor in the other car for Tsunoda, and he started this year really well. Problem for De Vries is I don't think he's going to have the luxury of being able to doggy paddle for a year and not get the axe. It's a bit more like when Brendan Hartley was put in. He's more experienced, De Vries. He's 28. He's done a Grand Prix last year and showed what he could do at Williams, but he's not, the young nipper that needs a load of time because of his experience in other categories as well. And that was the same as Hartley, who had 1 year, was beaten by Gasly and then was ditched. I think De Vries can do it. I still think he's got talent in there, and he's shown it in his career and in his race last season. But he's not going to have, I think, the luxury of having a couple of years grace, because also Tsunoda isn't Pierre Gasly either. The benchmark on the other side is Tsunoda, who has been under his own pressure, whereas Gasly's a race winner in the other car. So he hasn't got an established benchmark, and De Vries struggling is making Tsunoda look pretty good right now.
Yeah, back-to-back points finishes for Yuki Tsunoda, and in the qualifying head-to-heads, it's not a good story for Nick De Vries. 4-0 in both of them to Tsunoda. So under pressure, we are only 4 races in, but we know Red Bull doesn't particularly allow for a lot of time, and the pressure is always high if you're part of that junior program.
And a thing with De Vries in Baku, there was one practice and he did really well in it. He was really fast, and I thought this is the time where he's going to come to the fore. Leclerc took a few races to get up to speed when he came into Formula 1, and then turned it on in Baku in his Sauber. I thought De Vries was going to do the same, and first lap of quali he crashed, and you just think, oh no, you've just heaped the pressure on yourself, and you're starting last for the Grand Prix. The next thing he had to do was do a shortened qualifying session in the sprint. Having had no laps in the last qualifying session, he was always going to be on the back foot again, and it just snowballs like that. But already Baku, there was potential if he didn't ditch it into the wall. Problem is, we turned up here and he's already been in the wall, so he just needs to settle into the weekends a little bit more.
Yeah, well, De Vries currently just been demoted down to 18th. Zhou Guanyu has got a lap time in 17th. Verstappen currently fastest at the moment. Christian?
I was just going to make a point on Nick De Vries, because he almost added more pressure to himself, didn't he? Because of that unexpected call-up to a Williams Racing last season when Alex Albon was ill. And, of course, Williams didn't score that many points last year, and he came in. You guys will tell me, which race was it? I can't fully remember. Was it Belgium when Nick De Vries came in and subbed for Alex Albon?
I believe it was Monza.
Monza, thank you, yeah. And he came in and got a couple of points, which was a phenomenal performance. And I think that adds to the sort of feeling that everyone sort of expected him to just jump in this year, be a safe, solid pair of hands, almost take over from Pierre Gasly in leading the team. And he looks almost unrecognisable, doesn't he, from the driver that debuted at Monza. Jolien, do you know any reason why that might be, why he might have appeared more comfortable at Williams than we've so far seen him in a full-time role at AlphaTauri?
I think the Monza thing is different. Jumping in for a one-off, there's no pressure at all. He only jumped in on Saturday. His teammate was Latifi, who they weren't that far apart in Q1, and then Latifi went out and De Vries could go on and work his magic through the weekend. But Latifi wasn't exactly a tough benchmark last year, really struggled. So De Vries had no pressure. He had everything to gain on a track that's actually pretty simple to drive as well, Monza. If you're good on the brakes, you can drive Monza. Is basically it. There's the Lesmos, you've got a couple of medium speeds and a Ascari, you can carry the speed, but it's such a braking circuit that if you can get your car dialed in there, you can be fast. The Williams is so good on a straight, it was already going to be sort of flattering to someone driving that car. So I think the circumstances generally were good for De Vries there. Nonetheless, he did brilliantly well to combine that with actually securing points on Sunday. I mean, it was a superb effort. One of the standout moments, really, De Vries standing in last minute and scoring points for Williams. But the circumstances were just so different to starting a full season in AlphaTauri. The scrutiny of being a full-time Formula One driver. Tsunoda, whilst he's a happy-go-lucky guy outside of the car, his one job this year is to beat De Vries as well as he possibly can. He looks hungrier. He's probably literally hungrier because he's not eating as much. He looks like he's lost a little bit of weight. He's in better nick this year, Yuki, and his whole mindset is different. And there's just more pressures. It's a different environment for Nick De Vries here.
I don't understand why there was such a furore at the start of the year, and maybe still is, about whether he was classified as a rookie or not. In my mind, of course he's a rookie. You know, you bring up the Hartley comparison earlier, which I'd never really thought of, but just because he's a little bit older, and yeah, he had one race outing last time out, and he's been a part of junior teams or junior reserve driver roles, it still makes him a rookie, right? But even he was saying, oh no, I'm not a rookie. Yeah, he's more experienced, but still a rookie in Formula One.
It's the one race that he did that I don't know if it's the one for the technicalities. I'm sure Andrew Benson has a pretty strong opinion on this sort of stuff, but
I just to go back to 2016, I think Stoffel Van Dorn did a race in place of Alonso in Bahrain, got a point for it if I remember correctly.
You do,
and then he fully debuted the following year as we hear Sergio Perez.
Oh my goodness.
Who was coming around that tight turn 14-15 across the AlphaTauri and just gets out of the way and has a little bit of a close shave with the exterior wall.
That was De Vries as well that he was coming through, I think that.
Well, he knows we're talking about him. But so coming back to Van Dorn, I don't remember at the time people going when he had his full-time debut, oh, he's got all this experience, he's had an outing, he's done some free practice drives. Valtteri Bottas did 15 free practice drives before he stepped up into the Williams F1 seat.
Oh, well, look, I'd done a good handful before I stepped up as well. But I think it's more for De Vries. He was a Formula 2 champion quite a while ago.
2019.
2019 was it?
Yeah.
And he's making his debut in 2023. So in that time, that's a fair amount of time out. He's gone and won Formula E. He's been embedded within Mercedes. He's made a debut. He's just ticked all the boxes of motorsport, basically, apart from driving Formula One. He's a little bit older because he's had that time out. And still, I don't think we're looking at him as, like a really established guy that's been around the block in Formula One. We still look at him as a rookie. I still call him a rookie. And come on, he is. So there is still a bit of grace for him, making a couple of errors early on, and he can turn this around. I'm sure. I still think he's got the talent to do it. But the problem is, with every mistake, the pressure then builds, the momentum against you builds, and it starts to snowball out of control. So he needs to start kind of now. I still think he's getting rookie grace at the moment.
Well, Well, we'll see how his Miami Grand Prix weekend unfolds. We've certainly piled on the pressure for him at the moment, but Nick De Vries certainly knows how to drive a lot of different machinery, so we'll see how that unfolds. Black and white flag for Perez crossing the line at pit entry, so he's got to be careful with that, as Lando Norris sticks the set of the soft tyres on and goes fastest. The sound you're hearing is Logan Sargent, who has just popped himself up into 9th on the softs as well. So we're now starting to get a little bit of soft tyre running.
That's a bit tasty from Norris. 1 minute 28.7.
6.5 tenths clear of Max Verstappen on the medium tyre. Leclerc, Perez, Sainz, Russell, Ocon, Hamilton, Sargent, Alonso, the top 10. A lot of work being done in the Max Verstappen cockpit, having a look at the headrests, and he was complaining about that in FP1 and FP2. They've actually taken it out and are going to have the engineers and the mechanics are having a little fiddle down either side of his shoulders. So Verstappen clearly not quite comfortable in that Red Bull. And we're just seeing a replay of why Sergio Perez was given a black and white flag. Just nipped across the white pit lane entry line as you enter. I mean, it's not much, but you've got to. It's black and white.
Yeah, something of nothing for Perez. He'll get over that. I don't think that will change his weekend. Norris's lap, very good on the softs. Albon comes through and goes 3rd on the softs. So the soft tyres are giving a lot of lap time at the moment. Verstappen was on a medium, actually. The two Red Bulls are also on mediums, and they're really matching the two Ferraris in that first run. Half a second up on the Mercedes cars of Russell ahead of Hamilton. So Ferrari on 1 lap pace have been toe-to-toe with Red Bull. All of them stay in the garage. Now Sainz is the first of the 4 to just head out on a set of softs. And we'll see how far ahead they can go of Lando Norris, whose time looks pretty reasonable.
It certainly does. 38 minutes on the clock. Hashtag BBC F1 Jago has got in touch. Giovinazzi wasn't allowed to be called a rookie in 2019 as he did 2 races subbing for Pascal Wehrlein after his Race of Champions injury. So another case.
Well, where do you draw the line? This is you got to draw the line somewhere, haven't you?
And that was 2, not just 1 outing. But it's still not a full-time entry, is it? That's where you draw the line.
But is a full-time entry doing 10? 21?
50%, surely. If you're in for 50%, I think you can't quite call yourself a full rookie. Well, we've never seen the like.
Benjamin's had his say. 50%.
50%, that's the marker down. I expect the FIA to update regulations accordingly. Norris fastest then, 1:28.7, and his teammate Oscar Piastri has joined him up there, about half a second adrift on the soft tyre as well. Verstappen just behind them in 3rd, but right now, Christian, it's McLaren 1 and 2.
It is, and I'm down at McLaren, and I've just been speaking to the lovely people in orange in the McLaren garage. They are keeping feet firmly on the ground with these times, saying, listen, they're sort of one of the more early soft runners. But interestingly, talking to one of the team here who was talking to Lando in the break in between the sessions, and we were obviously saying, I mentioned I'd spoken to Lando yesterday, Lando Norris, and that he was expecting the track to grip up much quicker. He seems to think now that will happen. It's just taking a little bit longer than they had originally thought it would. So apparently the McLaren driver's reporting that the track is starting to quicken up and grippen up as we're going through this FP2 session. So expect that to keep happening throughout the weekend. And Lando also reporting that, and you would expect this, but the new surface notably smoother than last year as well. So that grip that we were expecting early doors seems to be finally on its way, certainly for the McLaren guys.
Hey, Christian, excellent stuff. And still a lot of action going down in the pit lane for the pit box for Max Verstappen and that headrest issue. The Joe Bauer from the FIA getting involved as well with that, and not happy with the way it's moving around, it seems.
Yeah, that's the FIA's technical delegate then having a little look, making sure that it's safe to release Verstappen back in. If he can't move his head and it's stuck, then Joe Bauer wants to have a look and see what exactly is going on with the championship leader out there. Same issue, remember, in FP1 as he's had right now. And whilst Leclerc, Sainz and Perez are all on outlaps, in fact the two Ferraris just winding it up for a fast one, Verstappen, now he does leave the pits in the other Red Bull, so a little bit later out, they seem to have sorted out. This is the sound of Fernando Alonso exiting the final corner, driving to the line. Norris on a soft tyre is top at the moment, and Alonso does not beat him, 3/10 behind.
It's only practice, but it's getting quite tasty out there, actually. Norris, Alonso, Piastri, Verstappen, Albon, the top 5. The sound you're hearing is the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz coming around the final corner now, and he goes second across the line. Still can't quite beat that Norris lap time at the moment, and not too much in it, just a few tenths of a second, in fact a tenth of a second, if that, between them. Leclerc, though, going even faster.
9 thousandths between Leclerc and Norris after 2 sectors. Norris was faster in the first. Leclerc is the fastest of all in the second, but he has a lock-up at 17, and he's not going to go quicker than Lando Norris. If he had matched his teammate in the final sector, surely he would, but there's no chance Leclerc can go that wide in that corner and keep the pace. No, he doesn't. He's 6th quickest. An improvement, but a screechy lock-up of the left front ruined the end of that lap for Charles Leclerc. So Norris remains fastest. The Ferrari has more pace in there, but Sainz not quick enough. 900s behind Norris, and Leclerc with a lock-up. We're going to get another replay of it here. He was just on the limit of the brakes. Tried to eke out another few metres on the soft tyre, the grip level coming up, and as soon as he turned it in a whisker, the front left tyre snatched into a lock-up, and he went wide. So Norris stays top.
Interesting, though, we saw Albon do something similar and in free practice 1 and still managed to find a chunk of time and improve his lap time. The sound you're hearing is Sergio Perez in the Red Bull, making his way into that tight and twisty middle sector before the approach onto the long back straight, 1.28 kilometres up through the gears.
I don't know if he's going to beat Norris. They're quite close through 2 sectors. The Red Bull's very good in the final sector. Long straight, on the brakes, little bit of a correction as he tried to get into the final corner. Wide on the exit as well, right up to the wall. Can Perez be the man to depose Norris of top spot? No, he can't. 4 tenths away for Perez.
Lost a lot of time in that final sector. Max Verstappen has just gone through the first sector, personal best at the moment. Sergio Perez actually seemed a little bit off the pace in practice 1, was outside of the top 10, couldn't quite match his teammate. We think didn't get as many runs on the soft tyre. Bit of a truncated session with the red flag with Nico Hülkenberg as well. But that gap now at the top of the standings, 6 points between Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. The Red Bull fight well and truly on as Alex Albon goes up into 3rd spot, 3 tenths adrift of Lando Norris. Max Verstappen goes purple in the middle sector. Can he be the man to displace Lando Norris with just over half an hour of this second free practice session for round 5 of the Miami Grand Prix? And yes, Verstappen is the man by nearly half a second. A 1:28.2 for the Dutchman. The reigning champ goes fastest.
Finally, someone could beat the McLaren around this circuit.
Things we didn't think we'd be saying at the start of this weekend, or indeed the season. But Norris holding firm in 2nd, Piastri down in 8th, and as Gasly's just slotting himself up into 8th. But Kevin Magnussen now has gone up into 6th. So nice lap time from the Haas, and that does have a new floor on it, we believe, as well.
Ahead of Perez by 3 thousandths is Magnussen. Perez is a best part of a second down on Verstappen, as he was this morning. It's looking like a tricky run so far for Sergio Perez.
Zhou Guanyu up into 8th as George Russell comes across the line, and he will be starting a lap in his Mercedes. So we'll see what Russell can do as he comes into turns 1, 2, and then you have the long S's that dominate the first sector. The Alfa Romeo of Zhou Guanyu gets nicely out of the way. Fernando Alonso finding time, gets himself up into 4th position. So it's Verstappen, Norris, Sainz, Alonso, Albon currently the top 5, but Russell looking quick at the moment, running a little bit wide, but keeps it planted. Christian down in the pit lane, what news do you have?
Well, still down at McLaren, and do you know what I really like about F1 this season? As we were debating, a little earlier about the rules and that sort of thing. I spoke to Pierre Gasly yesterday at Alpine. They obviously had a shocking Baku weekend, but said we never really got to fully see what the car was capable of, and we don't fully know where we're going to slot into the midfield pack this year. We've got McLaren pulling out lap times that they insist to me are still, early doors, and they're keeping their feet off the ground, but still look positive, and there's certainly a few smiles down here at McLaren. Alex Albon said to me yesterday that this isn't particularly a track suited to Williams, and yet there's optimism with both Alex Albon and Logan Sargent's times. One thing I like about Formula One this year is this midfield pack, it's anyone's guess. If you had to pick who would get the last few points, you have to pick who would be the slowest car. Seems really difficult to predict, and that's a really nice thing we've got in F1 at the moment.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Very true. And so far, this practice session spicing up quite nicely. Leclerc is now in second, just a tenth and a half adrift from Verstappen. Then Norris now down to third spots. Hülkenberg gets himself up into 13th. So towards the back, we're looking at, well, they're on outlaps at the moment, Hamilton and Sargent, but the two, it's Lance Stroll, 19th, but I say that, he goes up to 6th. In the Aston Martin, Nick De Vries, currently the last of the drivers out on track on the moment, but everybody out there on softs.
So Verstappen a tenth and a half ahead of Leclerc, who improved on a second flyer. This is the sound of Carlos Sainz on his second flyer. In the other Ferrari, accelerating his way flat out through the bends of 9 and 10. Meandering swerves at full tilt. Then he'll arc to the left and hammer the brake pedal and get it in towards turn 11 and the start of the twisty stuff for Carlos Sainz. If you take out Verstappen and Leclerc, the whole field is so tight. Behind Lando Norris still in third.
Is that something we're going to say all year long? If you take the top two out, well, the second place is Leclerc.
Exactly, it's Leclerc there instead of Perez right now. Perez is in the melee behind. Sainz is on a good lap here. 1/10 down on Verstappen into the final sector.
Here he comes, Carlos Sainz. The traffic getting nicely out of the way so far. Really tricky to do that in the tight and twisty middle sector, but so far, so good. Here comes Carlos Sainz then in the Scarlet Red Ferrari. He's got an AlphaTauri in front of him as he comes around the final bend. Gets nicely out of the way. Sainz finds time, goes second. A 1:28.3 for the Spanish racer. Not a lot in it at all. Less than just over half a tenth between Verstappen and Sainz. Leclerc comes into the pits.
Russell aborted his first attempt in the Mercedes, and he's just crossed the line on a new attempt on soft tyres, and he's 16th, 1.2 seconds away. The man that was fastest in this morning's practice, struggling to find some pace right now.
The sound you're hearing is George Russell coming through the first sector, those long S's.
That was a timely placed McLaren.
It was a McLaren just
didn't seem too
on
in the way.
Inside at turn 7, long left-hander. Didn't seem too in the way, did it?
No. Well, on Mercedes, a couple of things in from hashtag BBC F1. We can see that Hamilton and Russell's seasons are not going to start until they put the new side pods on the Mercedes. Any idea when that's going to happen? I'm presuming this is referring to when a Mercedes is going to start bringing this major upgrade that they've been working on to try and re-establish themselves up the order slightly. I think it's Imola, isn't it?
We've got a 2-week gap until Imola. It's a tricky run at the start of the season. Hamilton actually has just gone 7th quickest. Perez, the sound you can hear now, finally manages to jump up to 4th place. So that's a more sensible lap in the other Red Bull. We've got a 2-week gap until Imola, where supposedly there should be an upgrade for Mercedes. We've had a decent spring break, but then the sprint last time out in Baku, not a great time to bring significant upgrades. This circuit as well, the wall's so close, not a great time. So Imola is the time where we're expecting Mercedes to bring an update. How big it will be, how transformative it will be, remains to be seen. Ferrari, remember, have a new floor for this weekend. They're sitting second and third. With Perez now actually just a tenth and a half down on Verstappen. The two Red Bulls and the two Ferraris fairly evenly split right now. Ferrari with an upgrade, they're quite bullish about it. Is it working? Well, we know the one lap pace anyway wasn't the problem. It's the long run pace that has been in the past.
This is the sound of Alex Albon bailing out of the corner and finding the runoff area and gets it spun back around the right way. That was coming into the final corner of this Miami International Autodrome. We did have a yellow flag out briefly, and that was the reason why. So Albon gets back on his way. No harm done there. And it was interesting coming into the weekend, just coming back to Mercedes, and Toto Wolff was saying, you know, one thing, back in the old days when there wasn't a cost cap, they would have just completely brought an entirely new car concept, even by Imola or before then. Now, because of the cost cap, one of the things they have to manage is they can't just do that anymore. They have to be really careful and precise about what they bring and how they bring it.
And yeah, you've got to target races where it makes sense to develop up to, freeze the development, and then we'll send that package to that race. And you got to think about, is it a sprint event? You've only got 1 hour of practice. Alpine, last time out in Baku, had a big upgrade. Again, they were really talking it up. They thought they'd seen some wonderful numbers in the wind tunnel. Didn't get a lot of running in the one free practice session. Didn't get it working very well. And the weekend was misery for them. So this weekend they seem to be back towards a pace that they were at in Melbourne, around the edge of the top 10 so far. Gasly and Ocon maybe looking best of the rest, or there with Norris right now. But if you bring an upgrade at the wrong time, you maybe don't learn anything, and you actually end up compromising that weekend. So it's about targeting the sensible weekend to bring it, and for Mercedes that'll be Imola, and it makes sense. It's just a shame that it's got to be round 6 for them to start making inroads.
Yeah, you mentioned Alpine there as well. Baku really was a bit of a disaster before it even started. Pierre Gasly going up in flames in FP1, and Esteban Ocon with issues as well. They did try out a new floor, and the sporting director Alan Permain did say, you know, despite all of the issues we had, we did get some good numbers and physical feedback from the new floor, saying it was performing well. Gasly right now is in 11th spot, Ocon in 9th, about a second adrift on the soft tyres. So hoping that they'll be actually able to get a bit more meaningful running out of the new floor that they brought last time around. We mentioned new floors as well this weekend for Ferrari and Haas. Alfa Romeo have got a new beam wing. AlphaTauri are trying out some front wing and side pod inlet bits. Aston Martin have got some new cooling elements as well. So there's a few bits and pieces from a couple of the teams being introduced, but expect a few more, perhaps bigger ones, in a couple of weeks' time when we head to Imola. Christian's at Mercedes.
I am at Mercedes, in between Mercedes and Ferrari, actually. I just wanted to make a little point, because you mentioned earlier, Harry, very kindly, it's my debut on 5 Live Formula One. It's also my first ever time stood in an F1 pit lane in a live session as an Aston Martin roars past. And I just wanted to make the point that there'll be many people listening to this who've never been fortunate enough to be up close to a Formula One car, and just how spectacular these machines are when you see them being driven in earnest. And even here in the pit lane, I was stood right next to Oscar Piastri a few seconds ago as he came in, and you feel the cars as a Ferrari comes in now, Charles Leclerc, you can feel, even as Charles comes in front of me now, them suck in the air around them. They dominate the space where they are, and then as quick as they've sucked in the air, you feel them exuding air, hot air, and the smell of the engine and the rubber. They are just the most spectacular machines that dominate the atmosphere around them. And that is coming into the pits at 70 miles per hour, let alone when they're going down from 180, 190 miles per hour on the start-finish straight into a tight braking zone. Spectacular machines, as an Alpine does the same again, that we're very lucky to witness close up and witness watch race.
Absolutely. 22 minutes left of this free practice session, and you're going to be joined by a few more cars, I think, because we've had a few that have popped into the pit lane as you were talking, Christian. But you're right, I mean, average speed around this track is about 140 miles an hour, 230 kph for these Formula One machines, the pinnacle of motorsport technology, engineering, all being encompassed into, well, 10 different design concepts. Verstappen and Red Bull leading the way at the moment in this practice session, just over 3.5 tenths clear of Sainz. But it's interesting, Russell has had a good go at it on the softs now, still only 15th. Hamilton out there at the moment, not going too well in the middle sector. He's just under a second back in 7th at the moment. So that 1-2 from free practice 1 seems like a long time ago now, Jolyon.
It was the case last year where one session Russell was looking really quick, the next they were lost, and Mercedes, I mean, I think they were just flattering themselves with this morning's running. This looks particularly gloomy for them, I have to say. Hamilton just squeezing his time down, 9 tenths now from Verstappen, 7th place, a 10th in behind Norris. Surely the truth for Mercedes is going to be somewhere in between. See, getting a replay of Hamilton slowing it down for turn 7 and just running a little bit wide and making a mistake.
Yep, a little puff of smoke off the tyre and kicking up the dust offline.
Russell's been really odd in this session. 15th place, 1.2 seconds down.
I think it's freewheeling through my left-hander, turn 2.
Now, how does that happen?
Just the car's running so stiff. Russell thinking is just lifting a wheel slightly as he's loading it up through turn 2. He suddenly looks all out of sorts. Looks like he's lost confidence in the car, and the load goes to the outside front all the time. The inertia and the G, and it's always the outside front that takes the work. And sometimes in low-speed corners, particularly thinking about Monaco, you end up lifting the inside front a little bit. But Russell saying that he thinks he's doing a little bit in turn 2 is strange.
Well, Christian's outside Mercedes. What can you tell us, Christian?
Well, Lewis Hamilton right in front of me, just coming into the pits as I move out the way. And what I can tell you is very similar to what we saw in FP1 when George came into the pits, and straight away the machine whirls into action as George's team immediately look towards the front of the car and sort of go, right, what's happening here? And I noticed as well a lady in the pits as part of the Mercedes pit crew taking photos on her iPhone of the wheel rims. Each particular part of the wheel rim, as soon as George has come in, took a picture at each angle, the sort of 4 main points of the wheel. So immediately, as soon as George was in, everybody's looking around to see what, we've just heard him on the radio say we're thinking three-wheeling, and then immediately you can see all eyes in the team on the wheels. So again, Mercedes digging into what happened there.
Well, if in doubt, get the camera out and take a photo and have a zoom in. Logan Sargent is on an outlap, the home hero in the Williams, and he's come into the pit lane as I thought he was about to wind up for a lap, but he's currently plumb last at the moment. So perhaps there's a few issues on that Williams, we shall see, but currently off the pace for the home hero, who born and bred in Fort Lauderdale, south of that, about 25-30 minute drive from there, south of Orlando, for this Miami International Autodrome. The Williams do a practice pit stop, but it's rather slow as they get the softs off and put the white hard tyres on to that blue Williams, and it makes his way out to the pit lane exit. Short journey, Williams the last garage on the running, and back out for Logan Sargent. So a bit of a lull then, with about 17.5 minutes to go. Plenty of the cars in the pits. Who's out on track? Sainz is out there. Norris is on an outlap as well. Piastri, Hulkenberg, and Sargent, who has just gone out too.
Time for some long runs. Back to a traditional weekend. No sprint. This will be qualifying in Baku time, but there's more data gathering for everyone out there. Hulkenberg switched to a medium tyre. Most will, they'll run 2 sets of tyres in the last 17 minutes if they possibly can, rack up the laps. And on the low fuel, the soft tyre was actually lasting 2 or even 3 laps. So the degradation looks pretty low. The DRS zones are a little bit shorter. It's Baku all over again, but it's the conventional format here.
What do you prefer? Are we getting more practice running, which, can be interesting to try and figure out where teams lie, or we could be enjoying a qualifying session right now where they're going full leather?
Oh, I prefer qualifying to practice. I'm still not convinced by the sprint format in general. And we've just had a little debate on the Checker Flag podcast about the sprint and the race in Baku and everything. And I still just wonder, a lot of people were doom and gloom about the race in Baku. And it wasn't great. I didn't mind it. I thought it was intriguing, if not enthralling. But I quite liked seeing everyone pushing so hard as they were able to on the hard tyres, getting so close to the walls. You had Perez tapping a wall, you had Verstappen tapping a wall, racing each other, just lap after lap, pushing the limits. I quite enjoyed that. But maybe that's a little bit of an acquired taste.
Well, I think what did it for Baku was because we're so used to having quite entertaining races, and it wasn't as entertaining as the previous Bakus, which maybe amplified why people thought it was dull, when really it wasn't as dull as we've seen other races be, if that makes sense.
The thing is, a lot of the previous Bakus, they weren't thrilling either. They had a couple of iconic moments, but they actually weren't thrilling. And I don't know, I just wonder if some of the having the sprint made the race itself. It was a teaser for the race, and we kind of knew what was going to happen, and the drivers knew what was going to happen. So it'd be interesting to see, even if this is low deg and with a reduced DRS, if there are just more unknowns in this one, even though they're getting more practice time. For me, the holy grail is reduce the practice time and keep the old format. Make it a 2-day weekend. Saturday, Sunday, 1 hour of practice. Let's just go for it. I think that would be fun. It's then the people at the track that lose out, who want to be there for the Friday action. I understand it as well. It's a tricky balance.
I always used to enjoy watching or listening to the Friday action as well. You know, a lot of people brought up the idea it doesn't quite, if you have a qualifying for the traditional Grand Prix on the Friday afternoon, it prevents a lot of people from watching it because they may be at work or they may be at school, which I do get, but also, no, everyone, if you really want to watch it, you can always have a sneaky watch of it, and it's quite entertaining to do that. So, but I do think it's interesting, a 2-day weekend, maybe, but I'm not sure Formula One would go for it. They seem pretty convinced that they're going to try and make the sprint format work in whatever format they can, because the Baku format came quite last minute. So I wouldn't be surprised if we've got 5 more this year if we get another tweak to the format.
Yeah, what we know is that they're going to adapt it on the fly and try and fine-tune something, and they're not afraid of tweaking around. And I'm sure there will be plenty more change to come. If not this year, then for next year, and try and find a model that really works. And the aim is to reduce the amount of practice sessions, basically. Make more sessions count is the remit. And that is what happened in Baku. Apart from the 1 hour of practice, even it made the 1 hour of practice count more, because you had to get out there and get something on the board, because the next session was qualifying, and if your Gasly and your car catches fire, you're stuffed for the whole weekend. And even practice counted, really, in Baku. So it did fulfill that role. But also there's more and more races on the calendar now. 23 races. It's a lot of races. Cutting down a day, a Friday. Oh, as Russell sends it into a spin turn. Your Scandi flick, and he's going again down at turn 11. Bottas would have been impressed with that one. Just another one outbraking himself in a big stop there. George Russell on a long run, as 19 of the drivers are, just De Vries in the pits. With more and more races on the calendar, losing a day of practice, giving people another day at home or another day off, it kind of makes sense. We're getting more action on the Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah, as we just get a replay of George Russell going deep, locking up on that front left tyre and doing the, what did you call it? Scandi flick?
The old Scandi flick.
Scandi flick, okay. Is that a rally thing?
A rally turn.
Yeah. And makes his way back onto the circuit. Christian, what do you make of sprints and the tweaked format? Yay or nay?
I said this on the podcast a little earlier. I'm still sort of glass half with it, and I can't work out whether I'm glass half full.
That's a joke. He's fighting the pre-practice.
And
just careful. Yeah. He's still 2 seconds back.
You were on a flying lap, and Ocon didn't get on the way.
Yeah, copy. But the free practice is the moment. It's good.
Fernando Alonso there on the radio complaining about traffic in the form of Alpine. I think that was Ocon in front of him, coming into that really tight and twisty middle sector through 12, 13, 14 and 15. So not a happy Alonso there. Back to you, Christian.
No, all I was saying is that I Jolie made the point of F1 adapting it on the fly, and I do think fair play a little bit, because it's good that Formula One is trying to capitalise on the sport's increased popularity, in my view, and go, look, let's see if we can make it a bit better. Let's see if we can change things. Let's see if we can learn from it. The only thing I would say is it is very expensive to go to a Grand Prix. Like, we're talking the cost of a family holiday to go to a Grand Prix weekend, if not more. Practice sessions are often a really good time for people who've paid an awful lot of money to watch the cars in action. And what made me think of this is I'm stood looking at the main grandstand now, and you can just see the fans look. Every time the cars go past, they're looking at every detail. And I think if we're shortening weekends, are we potentially shortchanging fans who pay an awful lot of money? I understand that we want to get meaningful sessions in, but I'm not sure we should be taking the number of sessions away because, you know, it's so rare to get to see these things in action for the fans, so we want to make sure that there's plenty of on-track action when you do part with your hundreds and hundreds of pounds to come to a weekend.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Hashtag BBC F1. Let us know what you thought as well. A couple of people getting in touch. I didn't enjoy the sprint format in Baku. Saturday was just a mini Sunday, but we'll forget that for the moment. Yellow flag, and we've got a Ferrari in the wall, and that is Charles Leclerc, who is well and truly lodged into the yellow Pirelli branded Armco barrier. And that is coming through the long left-hand sweeper. It's actually brought out the red flag as well. So time will continue to stop down with just under 10 minutes on the clock. Leclerc in the wall. Leclerc getting out of the car, Jolene. Turn 7.
He's very much win or bin, isn't he? Today, he's neither. He's bin, and he's third. And he jumps out. Crashed in Baku in that qualifying session, but he already had the pole position, the sprint shootout. Now he's gone in front at turn 6. Long left-hander. We saw a couple of crashes at this corner last year. Leclerc, I think he only knows one way to drive, and it is full tilt. He's always on the brink of... He's so quick. I think he's the fastest driver in the field over one lap, on average. But he does have a few moments with the barriers, and this is one. It's not a huge one. It's in on the right front. And here we go, jumping on board with Charles. Down a gear through 4. Picks an apex at 5, all fine. And it was on the downshift, running a little bit wide on the downshift, thump into the wall. Front right is mangled. The rear of the car intact. That's where the more sensitive parts are. We're right near the end of the session anyway. There's, 5 minutes to go, 8 minutes to go. So...
I crashed into turn 8.
Copy. Are you okay?
Yeah. Just the front right, obviously, is completely gone.
Copy.
It's not actually going to be that costly a crash, I don't think, for Leclerc. New floor on that Ferrari, so long as that has stayed intact, or they've got a spare, then that's going to be something to concern the pit wall right now. But in terms of damage, he straightened it up as he realised he was about to crash and didn't fight the car anymore, headed straight to the wall, and therein went the front right. But the rear of the car remained intact, and that's generally where the more sensitive parts are.
Well, Leclerc not wasting any time, straight on the back of a moped, and makes his way back to the pit lane. Work to do then for the Ferrari mechanics in between, this evening and tomorrow for free practice 3 and qualifying. But 7.5 minutes still on the clock, and the tractor is out there and getting that scarlet red Ferrari, and they'll have to have a little rebuild of the wall as well, but that shouldn't take too long. Christian is outside Ferrari.
Yeah, at the Charles Leclerc side of the garage, and the eyes of the team members here absolutely fixated on the monitors here in front of them. And I guess if you're a Ferrari mechanic, you're trying to get every clue from the TV pictures at this point as to whether and what any damage might be, as we see Charles Leclerc's car on the monitor in front of them, and they're trying to get as close to the TV screens as possible. So yeah, they don't look overly concerned down here at Ferrari, but they are certainly intrigued as to what state they're going to get this car back in, put it that way.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of work, but as you say, Jolene, the rear of that car looks fine, so certainly not too costly, and a new floor on that as well, so they'll probably want to do a little bit of a check on that, but actually, it's because it's the front right mainly, the floor should be okay.
Yeah, I think that they'll obviously have to rebuild the front right. I don't think it'll be significant there. It was a Tech Pro barrier as well, a little bit more give, and Leclerc getting a lift back on the moped. He's not going to lose much track time either. 6 minutes to go. The car is on a flatbed and coming back soon, so we'll probably get 4 minutes of action. No one's had significant long run lap times at the moment. From what they have, Verstappen and Leclerc have both done 2 laps on a medium. Verstappen was 1 second per lap quicker, and Perez was 0.4 quicker than Verstappen on his 1 lap compared to Max on 2. But that's all the data we've got. Andrew Betts is going to be very disappointed at the lack of long running. 5 minutes to go. Maybe it'll just keep us a little bit more in the dark about Sunday.
Well, there's the beauty in having these practice sessions. Just keeps you a little bit more in the dark. It builds up the anticipation for Sunday, perhaps. But session will resume then in 2 minutes' time, 18:26 local time. So they'll get a few minutes out on track. We'll see who takes the bait and runs with it. But it's Verstappen fastest, ahead of Sainz, Leclerc, Perez and Alonso. That's the top 5. Christian is outside Red Bull for us.
I am, and I half expected it to all go quiet at Red Bull, given those positions you've just mentioned, but you can hear Sergio Perez behind me getting back out onto the circuit, and as soon as the red flag dropped, really, and the cars came back in, Red Bull were busying themselves. There's Max Verstappen following his teammates quite closely, and Red Bull, I was surprised at their urgency. They clearly really wanted to get back out there ASAP, so Red Bull doing everything they can to squeeze the last few minutes out of this session and get back on the circuit and learn every bit of information they can. Certainly no complacency from the team that have so far been a country mile ahead in this championship battle so far.
Certainly is. Well, confirmation that the session will resume, and the cars then, they do want to get out there. They are stacked up and queuing. We are going to get a gaggle heading out on track for these last few moments of free practice too. So let's see if they can all manage themselves in a fairly good order, because traffic management is going to be an issue if they all head into that middle sector right up behind each other. But at a time when there's a few mumblings about Charles Leclerc and perhaps a long-term replacement for Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes, should he ever hang up his helmet in the near future. Right now, he says nothing's happening. He's got a contract with Ferrari to the end of next year, and certainly full focus on the Scuderia. But I imagine Mercedes and other teams will be looking at those kind of things. And as you say, he's building up a little bit of a reputation for win it or bin it.
But I still think he's one of the best out there. And if you're Mercedes and Hamilton in his twilight years, surely in Formula One, you're looking at Russell's obviously doing a great job alongside him. You're looking at who can step into Lewis Hamilton's shoes. There's very few people out there who have that. Maybe there's no one out there who can be as strong as Lewis in terms of pace, but also consistency. This is the replay of Leclerc thudding himself into the wall there. It's if you can't, you've got to at least have the pace to try and lead the line at Mercedes. And I think that maybe Leclerc or Norris is the wild card, who's still doing a very good job, 6th in this one. And apart from that, there's no one else to replace Hamilton if he's going. Hamilton still negotiating a new contract as well at Mercedes, so there may well not be a shot for Leclerc there, but that's something that Toto Wolff's going to be just looking out for.
I wonder, for Lewis Hamilton, do you think that actually Mercedes and their loss of performance after such dominant ways, that's actually now more than ever an incentive for Hamilton to stay on, because now he's in a fight to get back up front and work with that team to regain what they had. If they had just remained dominant, you have to wonder whether you lose a bit of motivation after a while.
He didn't seem to. He didn't seem to. 7 world titles.
Get bored of winning, right? Here's Sainz.
Well, just what happened to Charles? He lost the rear or the front?
Lost the rear.
So Sainz had seen where Leclerc ended up, nose in on that corner, and wondered how he managed to get to that position. Obviously didn't see the replay. A lot of the drivers could see the big screens around the circuit. Sainz then has been in the garage and a lot of drivers would have the screens down and see what's going on. Obviously didn't catch a glimpse of the action, so asking the engineer, how did he end up there? He lost the rear and corrected it off into the wall.
Well, just a minute and 13 seconds left, really. So Max Verstappen going full pelt to get the last bit of running and data gathering in before we head off into the evening, and we'll come back tomorrow.
I think Hamilton would be more likely to stay if he was winning, surely.
But
then you've got you're racking up the records, the wins, the championship.
But he says he doesn't care about the records. Yeah, okay, you love winning, of course you do, and that must be an amazing feeling to constantly do it again and again. To stay there is a mean feat, but I wonder if the satisfaction might be even greater if he was there, fell back and then got back. And is that something that will just keep him in the sport a little bit longer?
It's the get back bit, though, isn't it? If he just can never get back, how well does he believe in Mercedes? Does he believe that they can turn this around for next year? Lewis is getting older. He's got, well, already now the little bit of chat about Leclerc coming in. It's not great news for Hamilton when Russell's the young pretender there. Hamilton's 38. He'll be 40 in a couple of seasons. Can Mercedes give him a car to fight for a championship before he's 40?
Look at Alonso. Made all the wrong career choices in his life and then suddenly makes the right one with Aston Martin in a turn of fortune. And maybe Lewis just looks at that and goes, well, you never know in Formula One. You never know what's going to be around the corner. We do know for this free practice 2 session, the checker flag has fallen. So last lap times being set for on the medium compound tyre for the majority. But Max Verstappen then, fastest of them all. And Carlos Sainz just takes the checker flag in second, few tenths behind. 1:27.93 over Verstappen. Then Sainz, Leclerc, Perez and Alonso, the top 5. Lando Norris kept it up in 6th in that McLaren. So good lap time on the soft tyres. Then it's Hamilton, Stroll, Ocon and Albon in 10th. Gasly, Magnussen, Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas the top 15. George Russell was P1 at the end of FP1. It's P15 at the end of FP2. Then it's Piastri, Hülkenberg, Tsunoda, De Vries. And the home hero, Logan Sargent, 20th and last at the end of that FP2 session. And a couple of close shaves in those final few laps. We saw Sergio Perez in the Red Bull and Carlos Sainz in the Scarlet Red Ferrari having to lock up and get out the way of a couple of cars mid-corner. But an interesting session then, Jolien. One to whet the appetite for the rest of the weekend. Leaves us with more questions than answers, perhaps. But once again, it's Verstappen that finds himself at the top of the timing board.
Yeah, I think it's been a good day for Verstappen. Not there in FP1, but we know he was there. It was only the final flurry of times that shuffled him down. He ended up 4 tenths down in FP1, ended up 3 tenths up in FP2, nearly 4 tenths up. And more significantly, it's not been a great day for Perez. I think Perez has never looked quite as comfortable as Max through both of these practices. Surely it's a fight between the 2 Red Bulls. So in that stakes, it's definitely advantage Verstappen after today.
Game on, Christian.
Game on. Some breaking news. A photographer stood just next to me, just dropped a very expensive looking lens and there was a right crack. That sounds expensive. Anyway, the point I was going to raise is that as Carlos Sainz came over the radio and said, how did Charles go over there? I was going to come and talk to you guys about on the pit wall. I'm watching the Ferrari pit wall. Again, the level of detail, the guy's looking at the screen clearly still several minutes on, trying to work out exactly how Charles Leclerc went off there. So that is still clearly very much on the minds of Ferrari here as they peer closely at the TV screens looking at replays. But game on with the Red Bulls. And let's see how significant that little off proves to be for Charles Leclerc.
Indeed. If in doubt, Jolien, a gust of wind to blame?
It looked like it was on the downshift. He came in, had a consistent steering. I'm sure you can blame the gust of wind. We're going to finish it with conservatory fan chat and bring it full circle at the end of this hour.
Absolutely. A flick of the switch for a bit of conservatory chat, now that you know what the conservatory fan is. Practice starts getting underway to end this FP2 session.
Just a good through draft. That's what you need.
I'm sure the Ferrari technicians and engineers will be analysing that and going through the archive to see what quite happened to Leclerc. Mercedes reserve driver Mick Schumacher watching on from the pit wall as Lewis Hamilton makes a practice start at the end of FP2. So far, it's a bit anonymous from Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll at the moment. They ended the session for Aston Martin in 5th and 8th spots. So time to find for those two. Alonso wasn't happy with 4th, but quite good not to be happy with 4th last time out in Baku.
Yeah, the race pace is where Aston Martin are particularly strong, yet to really show the superb qualifying pace. We saw a bit of it from Alonso in Jeddah, getting on the front row, but generally the race pace is where they come alive. They will be hoping that it was a bit more degradation though than we saw in the very few long run laps that we had.
Well, more practice to come ahead of qualifying tomorrow. FP3 from 5:25 on the BBC Sport website and online. Do join us for that. Thank you very much, Jolyon Palmer and Christian Hugo down in the pits. I've been Harry Benjamin. Max Verstappen tops FP2 ahead of Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. Sergio Perez, the top 4. Let's see what happens tomorrow in FP3 before qualifying. This has been an IMG production for Radio 5 Live.